Hi, and welcome to my place. And first of all, I'd just like to say thanks to Kate and to Jerry and to Cordwainers and Albany Fields and all the cool people up in Hackney and all around my favourite estate that I'm missing so much, and for making this happen. And I'd also like to say a thank you to 10 Times Green and Albany Fields and to Kate again, who are investing in people like Kate, investing in gardeners instead of infrastructure constantly. And what a wonderful addition to the area Kate's been, and what a great piece of value for money Kate is. Okay, that's my plug. This is the last you're going to see of my face, you'll be pleased to know. So the rest of the stuff is all going to be about the garden, and hopefully stuff will be useful for domestic gardens and for public space, I hope. Okay, thanks. So here goes. This is a little once round our place, and as we go in we could have a chat about some few ideas and techniques. This is quite cool. This is a path made from industrial grids, and underneath these we've been growing some thyme and some herbs of some sort, so when you water over them they smell really good. That's a really nice little path. A cheap and easy path is these, and I use these a lot. This is just crushed concrete as a base, which is very inexpensive, and then a 30 mil or so of granite fines on top. It packs really well. And then the edging for this, which again is something that's worked really well for me, is just some 100 mil steel. You can buy it in 6 meter lengths, bolt it together, and you can make long lengths, and then you can flap it around and get all sorts of mad looking curves. A sand planter. So I'm going to show you a kind of commercial version of this. We've sort of made it a posh now, but this is the original prototype. So the idea is that this is packed with sand. The ground nesting bees nest in on the top, and they also nest in through the holes in the side, which you can kind of see. So this is a way of getting sand into urban places. Following around, this is the new garden. So well, the other bit was as well, but this is sands. 3 different sands from the A13. So you've probably seen on my social media that I've been trying to convince the highways people to leave the embankments on the new road widening scheme as sand and not dump topsoil on it. In the meantime, I managed to get about 60 tonne of the 3 different sands just to try and trial them here and see how they work for invertebrates and for plants, just to prove to them how important this sort of habitat is. Now bearing in mind this has only just got in, so it's not very exciting from a plant point of view, but it's very exciting from a bee point of view, because all these bare bits of sand are what bees absolutely love, ground nesting bees. So you can see, let's see if we can get close enough to see. Okay, this sort of environment is the perfect place for bees. So some of these holes, I don't know if you can see any of these holes, maybe not. They love this. So sparsely vegetated sand banks in sunny places is what you need. And there's a few more planters, and we've been messing around to try and get an aesthetic for some of these bee habitat, and this perforated steel tube which is filled with sand, we're just trialing that to see if that works, see if we can get some bees in that. So I thought we'd look at the materials we're growing all this stuff in. So it's not quite as flowery as it is, but as it could be this time of year, but there's some interesting stuff that we're growing the plants in here. So this material, which you can see these plants are growing in, I don't know whether you can see what that is. That's crushed glass, so that's pure crushed glass, and no organic material, nothing you'd thought the plants would be happy with, and there's just all sorts of interesting stuff going on in that. This is the most hostile sort of material, I'd guess, which is crushed concrete, so pure crushed concrete. It's very alkaline, very dry, but I'll show you a bit later. It's just amazing for some certain species of plants. And this stuff, which I touched on earlier and talked about, this is crushed toilet sinks, ceramics, and this is one of the best materials to grow plants in. Again, this is early days, we've only just sown these areas, so there's not much showing, but later in the video we'll see some of the stuff that's been established. And then you've got all sorts of other, so crushed brick is the other material we've used. We've used the slops basically out of the crusher, which cost us nothing. which is a mixed bag of stuff. The biggest problem I have, to be honest, is getting plants not to grow rather than plants to grow. Immediately, one of the obviously this time of year, the flowers are only just coming out, but you can see the dominant flower is the annual Californian poppy, which is such a useful plant. I use it on the housing estate, and in brownfield areas it loves it because it obviously naturally grows in sand, so it just really loves this sort of space. But what I really like about this material to grow stuff in is the variety of plants you can get. If you reduce the fertility, the variety of plants you can get in a small space, it's a bit like chalk downlands kind of stuff. I mean, maybe not quite as good as that yet, it's only been here a year, but just have a look at the different plants, the textures of the leaves. You can see how many different species there are growing in this stuff. And you'd never, well, you could get it in topsoil. No, you couldn't get it in topsoil because one or two plants would dominate, even if you weeded it every week. But don't forget, I'm looking after this space. I've got 4 acres of space, so I'm looking after this garden and 3 businesses, and I'm an old bloke. So the only way I can do that is to have this level of fertility, which makes it a very manageable, it makes it possible for me to get this diversity of plants. If this was on topsoil, I'd have no chance. And I was talking about crushed concrete earlier, and this wild thyme, have a check out of this. This is wild thyme. Really difficult normally to get to grow because it hates competition and it gets out competed by everything. This is all grown in crushed concrete. Absolutely loves crushed concrete. A few more bee bits. These are just some box bamboo tubes. Obviously, you know this one. Bamboo tubes with in a box. They give you the bigger size holes, and then what we do is we drill holes in the post to do the smaller size holes because people always forget these. So we go from 3mm holes up to 6mm holes in the post, and then the bamboo tubes do 8mm, 9mm for the mason and the leaf cutter bees. And again, this is on the bank. All this is crushed ceramics, toilet sinks, all the rest of it. But you can see, hopefully you can see anyway, the mixture of plants in here within a year, and are manageable for me to keep this weeded and looked after as well. But keep mixing up the materials, logs, stacked logs, and these are buried logs that stay a bit damper. They work really well. And finally, we've had a little dabble at a sand wall. So this is a perforated sheet that we've created a wall with, 2 perforated sheets 8 inches apart, packed with sand, and this works as an acoustic wall really, really well. And again, the bees nest in through the holes in the perforated steel. This little patch here, we've just trialing standard building sand. So we was worried that the construction waste might be too difficult for people to get hold of. So this is standard building sands, bricklaying sand, sharp sand, which is that, and ballast, which is what you make your concrete with. And we're trialing the plants in all these. The reason brownfields are so good is because they're diverse in topography and in materials and in substrate and in light and shade and in moisture levels. Okay, so if you mix up the substrates, if you mix up the materials that you make your garden with, you're going to get way more diversity of invertebrates. And if you get more diversity of invertebrates, you're going to get more diversity of wildlife in general. That is the key. It's not a case of just dumping stuff and making it look like an industrial site. It's a case of not habitually dumping topsoil and using topsoil. Because as soon as you put topsoil on a site, you're fighting against what the topsoil wants to default to. The vegetation wants to become nettles, docks, coarse grass if it's fertile, doesn't it? That's what gardening is. We're just fighting against that. This is what allows us to go with it. This is not fighting. This is actually giving the plants what they want, and also giving a gardener, someone like me, in their own place, and most importantly, public space to get this sort of diversity of colour and plant species in public space. If you use topsoil, you will not have the maintenance budget for it, will you? This gives you a chance to have that, and this is why I think it's so important. Move the topsoil to the food growing areas, move the topsoil to the high-end horticulture where they've got tons of maintenance staff. Use poorer substrates when you're redeveloping public space.